everybody, welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. I'm Molly Herford, and when I'm not outside running or biking or a million other outdoorsy activities, I'm probably here writing about or talking about doing them.
And I'm Peter Glassford. I'm a registered kinesiologist and an endurance coach, and you are here on the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we talk about different movements and the people that do them.
I was about to be like, don't screw up.
I screwed up because I didn't say where our hope is that you can then apply what we learned back to whatever movements you're doing.
Oh, okay, fine. You did screw up.
Well, you interrupted, but here we are. So
Anyway.
what have you been up to, my dear?
Man, a lot of running, and you know what? I have to say, after the Summit 700, my calves were so sore, and I think it took longer to recover from that 21K race than it did to recover from either of the 50Ks that I've done.
A lot of uphill, a little bit more intensity, a lot of
A
downhill.
lot of downhill, straight into the finish.
Now, what did that look like? You have your coach, David Roche, one of the top coaches. You won a race. So what does that week after, something like this half marathon? This is like a 2.5 hour effort. What's that look like?
Well, the parade for me was a really nice touch.
What parade?
There was no parade.
Oh, yeah. Your husband wasn't super impressed the next day?
My husband's parents were pretty impressed.
Oh, there you go.
My in-laws were great.
They don't get a lot of wins.
Yeah, well.
So what does it look like? You race on Saturday.
Yeah.
So then what's it look like?
Well, Sunday, unfortunately, looked like trudging up a hill to make sure you were fed and watered at the Canada Cup. But
so you're spectating. You didn't do a workout, though.
Generally speaking, rest day, take it super easy, eat some good food.
Okay,
and,
Monday, 2 days out.
2 days out. Easy run. We were sort of right back in the saddle. And I mean, I'll also say though, normally after 50K, I have 3 or 4 days off, but because this race, well, it went super well, it wasn't really on the calendar as like one of my A races or like a race that we really were thinking of like, okay, this is what we're going, this is what we're gearing up towards. So even if you look at my week ahead of that race, like my taper involved a 27-mile trail run 6 days before that race.
Right.
So it was a bit of a different recovery strategy,
But still,
coming out of that.
there was that was an hour, and in the context of things, that was an easy hour, 2 days out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what's day 3?
Day 3 was rest again.
Okay. So there's a fair bit of rest there.
Yeah. And then yesterday we were back at it. Today, back at it. Tomorrow, back at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you
go. I'll spill the beans. We're recording this a little bit early because we have a pretty busy week coming up. Peter has nationals, so we'll have to talk about how that goes on our next episode. But yeah, we're gearing up for a really fun few days between nationals and some family visiting, and then some camping and some kind of recon of some really good hiking trails. And yeah, it should be a really fun time. I'm excited to actually get in some camping. I feel like it's been a really long time since we've done... Okay, let's be honest, I don't camp a lot, and I actually get outed for that in today's podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, I asked the question of our guest about how she handles showering and all that kind of stuff when in the backcountry and living the #van life, and she sort of schooled me on it, and I had to admit that I really like a campground that involves a shower.
Right. Yeah. We're still easy to it. I mean, you play a good play on the sort of van life and stuff for sure, but
I like my showers.
Right. So we have Morgan Sjogren.
Yep, you got it. Good job.
And she's got a new book. It's called Outlandish: Fuel Your Epic.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting book because it's kind of a cross between a cookbook and a running memoir, I'm gonna say.
And it's like a coffee table book in some ways. It's an oddly shaped book.
Yeah, but very, very cool. Tons of gorgeous photography and
really nice photos.
That's what makes it. The layout is really cool. It's just a really impressively put together book, and I love her stories in it, and she really weaves a good narrative around some really great camp style cooking. So a lot of really hearty recipes that are pretty easy to make, sort of no matter where you are, and some tips on how to make stuff with very minimal ingredients, or just with the ingredients that happen to be around or be in your cooler in your van, or that, you know, you forage in the woods. There's a little bit of talk about foraging that I really enjoyed.
Right.
I feel like foraging is like my next great frontier.
Yeah, I know. I actually haven't read the book. It's on my stack of books. I did just post a stack of books to Instagram, and it's actually some really good recommendations. So my stack of books just got bigger, and this book's in it. But I have just leafed through it a bunch of times, just sort of looking at the different pictures, and I like flipping through recipe books. So I think what I really like about this book is that it's got a sort of wide appeal. It might just be, you know, sort of pictures to look at, coffee table book style, or if you're looking for a recipe, or if you're looking for some camping, or you're looking for trail running sort of motivation.
Yeah, and so Morgan used to be a elite track athlete, and she turned into a, you know, long course trail runner. So we talk a lot about how she got into that, what that looked like, and sort of some tips for making that transition. I mean, it's, you know, it's not always the easiest thing. It always looks super graceful in these, you know, great Instagram photos of trail running, and admittedly in the photo she has in the book, but it takes a lot of work to get to the level of like smoothness running that she has. So we chat a bunch about that.
Yeah.
Oh, and to throw back to one of our past guests, she actually has a whole chapter talking about burro racing, which came up last time we talked to Chris McDougall.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to have him on again soon, talking about his upcoming book, which is out this fall. So many authors talking about burro racing.
Yeah, I think it's coming back.
Do you think we have room for...
Is it coming back, or is it just having a first coming? I'm not sure how burro racing...
I think it's having a comeback. Do we have room in the condo for a burro?
No.
So
I feel like
dachshund?
people are concerned about the, like, ethics of burro racing.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to have Chris dive into that. But for now, let's get into all things camping, cooking, trail running, stove lighting, etc. with Morgan Sjogren. Enjoy. Morgan, these days, when people are asking what it is that you do, how are you answering them? I feel like every person we have on, I always ask that, because it's different from, you know, week to week with a lot of people, and I feel like you're one of those people.
Yeah, I'm a freelance writer, full-fledged, full-time. I definitely have dabbled with other careers and do side things, but my bread and butter and livelihood and passion is writing.
And obviously, most recently, your book just came out, Outlandish, which is absolutely beautiful, by the way. It's so...
Thank you.
So pretty, and it just makes me want to go outside and cook, which is not a phrase that I would normally use that often.
That's awesome. That's exactly what I was hoping for.
I'm like, my version of camping is usually, you know, a Snickers bar and stuff like that. But this was like, oh, maybe I should try cooking more when I'm out.
Totally, and I'm a Snickers bar girl too, so I get it. You know, it's good to have some variety in your life.
Yeah. So what made you decide this is the time to write this book?
So I had been living on the road for I don't know, half a year, and I would joke around with my friends that I was going to make a cookbook someday called 50 Shades of Burritos, because I just had a stack of tortillas and was filling them with whatever ingredients I could get my hands on, just the cheapest stuff or things I picked from the ground. And I usually didn't even cook it because I didn't have a real cooking stove at the time. And Velo Press actually approached me maybe like half a year later and asked if I had any interest in proposing book ideas to them. And knowing that they had created some beautiful cookbooks, I kind of teased them with that idea. But I knew it had to be something more than that. And I had fallen in love with a few books that were more story and narrative driven, but paired with recipes that really helped connect the reader with the experiences in the stories. And so I knew I wanted to do something like that ultimately. And I pitched it to a couple different publishers, but Velo Press ate it up and really bought in on my vision, you know. And when you have an opportunity like that, where a publisher is going to help you bring your outlandish dream to life exactly how you envision it, only even more beautiful, the time is now. So that's how it happened.
I love it. And I really do like the mix of the narrative with cookbook, because to be honest, I've never met a cookbook where I actually, you know, follow a recipe, you know, one step at a time. I like looking at them for ideas. So I really liked in yours, it was, you know, story, recipe, okay, I can take some ideas and tips from this, but I don't feel like I'm kind of ignoring most of the point of it.
Same. And even the recipes, they're also written like stories, and really, I don't intend for people to follow them to the letter. You can, if that helps you. And we had to really hone in on that for chefs who just wanted to like follow directions, but really they're meant to be like guides and ideas. And I hope that someone looks at a recipe and goes, well, I have a few of those ingredients, but I also have this, and well, this is what we've got to cook it with. And they come up with their own creations too. It's really, I hope, like used in that way, the way most people use cookbooks, where you go, that looks good. Well, this is my way.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I also have to ask, how did the writing process look from writing it, while doing all of these crazy adventures?
Yeah. It was an interesting, writing process. I was also simultaneously writing a guidebook to Grand Staircase Escalante, and freelancing, writing other stories and traveling quite a bit. So I definitely, I am a bit, like to keep busy. There was a lot of photo editing as well, and then honing in on the recipes. My life just kind of flowed in like big swings. Like I'd be out in the backcountry or in the desert and the canyons for a week at a time, and I'd work myself pretty good and come back kind of trashed and need to sit down for a week, and then I would just kind of do nothing but write and edit and work on photos for a week and go for easy jogs. So it kind of made an interesting like on-off switch for adventure writing. Mm-hmm. And I still kind of use that flow to this day.
Yeah, I really like that. I like adventure writing just kind of leads into adventure writing. So
exactly. And I take notes when I'm out on adventures, and I jot things down, but you're not going to develop a full-fledged essay or read a chapter of a book while you're also trying to make beans and find your water and not get lost out, off trail in the desert. Like, that's not the time to try and get writing done, and usually if the adventure is good enough, the memories are pretty embedded in your brain. You're not going to forget them.
Yeah, absolutely. I also find when I'm out running, that's actually when I get sort of the best, we'll say, downloads for writing. It's like, oh, okay, that's how I can actually explain this and, write
totally.
it.
Like a lot of times when I've been sitting and I get stuck for too long and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't even gone outside. And I'm like, oh, I should keep writing. And I just go out for like 30 minutes, like something unravels and like I figure it out. And I find myself like racing back to my laptop and getting a mini speed work in so I can go like solve the puzzle I've been trying to work on all day.
Mm-hmm. That's actually why I bought an Apple Watch a couple years ago, thinking like, oh good, I can record things into it and it'll like, do the voice to text. It did not work. Do not recommend that.
No.
But it's totally
it sounded like a great idea.
I know, right? I've also thought about like running with like a little recorder so I could do that, but then you just realize...
I do run with my phone sometimes in these kind of scenarios where I'm running mid like writing time, and I stop and take notes when I have an epiphany, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I've started doing instead of trying to pretend like I'm going to record it, because I just look like the insane person on the trail that's like blabbering into my phone. And I don't know if you're like me, I write a lot better than I speak when I'm trying to get an idea down. So
if I had to say out loud the things that first came into my head, oh my God, I would look like a crazy person.
Exactly. It's so bad. So what are you up to now? I mean, the book's been out for a couple months. Where are you in life, in the world, etc.?
Well, so the book came out in May, and I immediately after my first book event for the launch took off for a travel writing adventure to Patagonia with one of my best friends, where we ran around Torres del Paine National Park. And then I had a one-day layover and flew straight to Tahiti to explore trail running and hiking and rock art on the islands of Tahiti. So I was gone for about a month and completely shifted gears to new landscapes, which was really exciting, and a dream come true to really do something different with my writing. But then it was back to the Southwest, and I've been kind of all over the place and doing book tour stuff and promoting Outlandish, and I'm still in the editing stages for the Grand Staircase guidebook I'm working on that should be out this fall. Just, digging into that stuff and writing, and then just going on adventures and enjoying my backyard. That was one of the best parts of coming back from those trips, was realizing, vacation's great. Well, not that it was vacation, it was work. But, these exotic places are amazing. And where I live is so amazing as well.
Yeah, I find I've actually been writing about it a bunch lately. I kind of go between when I'm home, I'm like, oh, I want to be on all these adventures and like get kind of the wanderlust. And then when I'm actually gone, I'm always like, really wish I was at home and like settling into my trails here and, you know, doing my day-to-day. So I'm like, I'm just a contrary person with that stuff, I think. But
I think a lot of us are. I definitely am too, you know, and you just have to, I think there is no solution. You can't be everywhere at once, even though, gosh, like, I know I've tried this past 2 months. It's almost possible to be everywhere in a month. But you just have to go with ebbs and flows. Yeah. Totally get it.
So a lot of people obviously have this urge to do the, you know, van life thing or go on all these adventures, and they want to do it, but they just kind of can't get over, I guess, like the, you know, the normal expectations. Like I loved in your acknowledgments, you mentioned like thanking your parents for, you know, being extremely tolerant of what you're doing. And it's funny because I've written almost the exact same one to my parents. What kind of advice do you have for kind of getting going and making those leaps?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because like I didn't necessarily like living in my Jeep wasn't the goal. It was a way that I knew I could work towards my goals. In saving money on rent, and I, you know, had to leave the place I was living, and I had my Jeep, and I didn't have anywhere else that I had to be. I wasn't rooted down in a career somewhere. And I knew I wanted to travel, right? So for me, it really facilitated what I was working on. And I think really the big thing for people to consider is to like not let other people's perceptions of you get in the way of things you want to do, but also don't go against the current of like your own dreams. Like I also realized like, you know, I figured out along the way that living in my Jeep and traveling the way I did was not conducive to recovery for training for like competitive trail races and track the way that I used to. And if I had wanted to continue to pursue that at a high level, I know I would have had to make some changes to my lifestyle to be more suitable, like root myself in a place longer than, you know, a few days at a time. So, you know, it's really looking at your lifestyle choices, and like you're going to feel most fulfilled and happy, in my opinion, when they work with your goals. You know? Yeah.
It's so funny. The next question I had written down was, how were you handling recovery? Because I'm, you know, reading this book and you have all of these, like, then, you know, you're doing these epically long runs and, you know, insane trail adventures. And I'm like, how are you possibly recovering from these in a Jeep?
Yeah. You know, I've had my moments. It was really hard when I was still competing, you know. I think that first cycle I was out there, I competed in the U.S. Mountain Championships and the U.S. Trail Marathon Championships, and did my first 50K and a couple other competitive races. And I do a really hard workout, and it just was hard to get the recovery in. It's just like nutrition was kind of off, and I sleep well anywhere, but it's just not the same as putting your legs up on a bed. And when you're training really hard, you need to nap. And I did a pretty good job. I have pictures of my friends caught me at the Silverton Library taking a cat nap in my Jeep in between work and training stuff a couple years ago. But, you know, as far as like regular adventures go, I'm pretty good. You know, once you start to get beat up or you do a really big day, I now just am a big fan of like total rest. Like, I'm not on a training schedule. So if I do something big and then I have to do a really long drive, I'm not going to try and sit in a workout too. And my workout is getting from point A to point B, finding good food, and getting a lot of sleep. And so that's made it totally possible. Because the number one, like, negative thing for me would be getting sick.
Yeah. I can't really imagine it being super fun to have a terrible cold or the flu out of a Jeep. Actually, the flu would be way worse.
I've gotten sick a few times. Look, I've gotten pretty lucky. Luckily, being outside a lot, I think, really does help your immune system.
Yeah.
But I did get I got a nasty cold the beginning of last summer out in southern Utah, and it was just brutal. Like, that is not a cozy place to be when you don't feel good.
Yeah. So that kind of backtracking, what made you shift from elite track running to ultra trail running?
Yeah, so when I ran my last track race, it was a 5K in 2016, and I had been kind of hurt on and off all season and had just scraped together a season. And in my last race, I mean, I got like 6 weeks to train, and the rest of the time I was just like hiking around the snow with my dogs or sitting on my butt and driving in my Jeep, I managed to PR by 1/8 of a second, which is like nothing. It's hilarious. But like, I still ran faster. So it's kind of ironic because obviously I had more in me, but it didn't mean the same to me. I realized like so much of it was arbitrary, and like I had trained so much harder in other seasons and run faster. And I just kind of knew at that moment when I walked off the track, I'm like, I think it's time to move on. Like, if I can improve by totally shifting gears, what else could improve in my life if I totally shifted gears? And I just really wanted to play in the mountains. So I spent that summer just going on adventures. And actually, my aunt and uncle were camped out on the other side, on the west side of the Sierras, where I was living at the time. And they wanted me to go camping, but it was an 8-hour drive. But I looked at a map and I was like, oh my gosh, it's only 25 miles across the mountains. That would really, I mean, that would only take me a few hours. And I was a 5K, 1,500 runner, so that was a very long run for me. But I just figured, look at it like a backpacking trip. So I ran across the Sierras to see them, and then, camped out and ran back the next day. And I was hooked. I had never really intended to race. That kind of came as a byproduct because I was so fresh off the racing thing. But I was really captivated by the ability, instead of going to the track, getting to play in the mountains or the wilderness every day.
Yeah, and how was the adaptation to it? Because obviously running over mountains is very different than running circles on the track. What was the hardest part to get used to? Getting used to the distance, the time on the feet, my nutrition. I definitely bonked really hard a few times because I didn't know what I was doing. I'd bring a little bit of water, some jelly beans, and some Pop-Tarts, for half a day of running. And eventually, early on it was okay, but it took a while for my feet and my lower leg ligaments to adapt to the multi-dimensional steps, because track is so repetitive. Mm-hmm. With time, my body is I feel like it's fully adapted now, but definitely the first year I would get pretty beat up and have some foot soreness where I just couldn't run. And as my tendons and ligaments adapted to the change of terrain and the style of running. So that was the hardest part. And the distance thing, if I'm going for an adventure, it's one thing, but racing super long distances, I still haven't really adapted to that. Yeah, racing for 4.5 or 16 minutes is really different than 10 to 16 hours. Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And what about did you add in any strength or mobility or anything like that, or are you just pure running?
Well, so when I did track, I did tons of that. I mean, we were doing mobility every day, and we were doing strength training 2 or 3 times a week. I was training with the Mammoth Track Club, and before that, I was on several other competitive teams. And then when I moved into my Jeep, that was part of the recovery problem. I'd get my run done, and then I'd want to socialize with people or drive somewhere or read something to get a leg up on where I'm going tomorrow. And I'd do that instead of I couldn't go to a gym and do strength training. I would try and lift water jugs and do stuff. And I'm trying to incorporate it back into my life again. But yeah, that's definitely kind of fallen by the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
Not recommended.
Yeah.
I'm doing some ankle mobility right now. I'm reminding myself. Oh yeah.
Nice. You just mentioned, wanting to chat with people after runs and stuff. So question for the introverts out there, and I'm definitely one of them. Any tips for, actually making friends? Because again, in the book, it seems like, most places you go, you ended up with new friends. So for those of us that are not super skilled with the chatting with people, any tips?
Yeah, it's interesting because I living in my Jeep kind of exposed, I guess, with my sort of extreme personality. I can definitely do long stretches alone. Although I get to a breaking point where I'm like, okay, this is too much. But then when I'm also around, a big crazy social setting, I crave I just wish I could have a night out camped alone by the stars. So again, those making peace with those contrasts, but just not being afraid to be friendly with people and non-confrontational settings like coffee shops or group gatherings where just sitting next to someone and asking if the table's full instead of taking up your own table. Things like that. It's been surprising, how many friends I've made just that way.
Yeah, and that's such a small, easy one.
It's super small. And, a lot of times after, if I didn't know anybody and I was just going way too long without, because I just sometimes wouldn't see people for a really long time, and I would just go to a coffee shop or take myself out to lunch, even though I didn't really have the money to do that often, or go to a library, and just those small human interactions would, make me feel more normal and sane, but often really kind of developed into friendships. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just being open to it. Most people are nice. They're not going to judge you. And it's, people like meeting people who are traveling.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so traveling, I have to ask because I'm obsessed with like the what's in your bag kind of articles. I used to love them as a kid. And, obviously I naturally love all of the like what people have in their vans. And I imagine your stash of stuff is even more pared down in the Jeep. So how on earth did you decide what to bring with you on sort of that initial, I'm leaving in this Jeep? And what stuff do you bring on every single trip? What are your like staples?
Well, it's interesting. So I gave myself like a very short window, like we're talking like under 15 minutes, to grab stuff from the house I was living in at the time and get the hell out of Dodge, because I was living in a bad situation. So I had already like gone through my head for like a survival situation, like a fire or an earthquake or a natural disaster, like what I would bring if I had to get out somewhere. So I just used that mentality, and I brought enough clothes. I brought all my like camping and survival gear and a few books, and that's about it. And really to this day, that is about it. I don't have a fancy solar shower. I always have a 7-gallon jug of water. I have all my like cooking supplies. I have a real stove I can cook on in the back of the Jeep now. I always have a really warm sleeping bag, even in the summer. I just basically want to know that like if I got stuck somewhere, I'd be fine for a week. Mm-hmm. I could just set up camp and figure out. I always have my running shoes. I do like to know how far I am away from civilization or a road in case I have to run. And kind of the cutoff for me is like, okay, I really wouldn't want to run more than like 25 miles. If I got stuck, then I have to think of a different plan.
That's fair. I guess that might be the argument for getting like a folding bike or something to bring with you so you could extend the distance.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I do have a backpack, so I could just like hoof it. But yeah, thankfully, I've had to do some hitchhiking, but it's all been resolved and reasonably taken care of in a few days.
Nice. So I also, in the book, you have like your list of backpacking and car camping food tools. So what are like just 4 or 5 of the most important things for cooking while camping?
Well, a quality knife and a lighter are a must, not only for camping, but for for cooking, but camping, survival. And I even bring them along with me on runs. You just never know. Those are things you can use for so many purposes, and I've definitely had a lighter save my life on an outing that went wrong, and I didn't bring anything else. So those are indispensable. A spatula and a cast iron are also really good. You can cook on a campfire with a cast iron. And I like to have a portable way to make coffee, because I love coffee. So either a small thing for a pour over, or French presses that I keep buying from the Goodwill and inevitably breaking on the way.
I was so glad when I saw that about the coffee and your little absolutely no to instant coffee, because I am in the exact same boat. Won't do it. Can't do it for some reason.
I've done it on a few missions where I really had to cut weight on things, in the backcountry. And actually Alpine Star instant coffee is pretty good. But even then, most of the time I bring a really light pour over filter and regular coffee.
Yeah,
it's just that worth it.
It just weirds me out. I can't explain why, but instant coffee just creeps me out.
No, it's not good. It's definitely not good.
And so also, in terms of the book, a lot of the recipes are really good for, these super active days. And I have to say, it was really nice to see a cookbook coming out that wasn't super hashtag eat clean or paleo or raw vegan or any of these things. It's just these are actually things I would totally eat, while camping and hiking. And, doing really active stuff where I actually need a lot of hefty food. But what does a normal day of eating look like for you? I assume at some point you're eating some salads and greens and stuff.
There are salads in that book.
There are, yes, that's true. There were, a couple.
I always kind of knocked on myself, like maybe I'm not eating enough fruits and vegetables. But when the VeloPress team and I went to buy all the ingredients to do the food shoot for the photos, some of them were taken in the field, but a lot of the photos for the food we did out in the desert on a 2-day set, and we couldn't believe it was almost all produce. So I really am not like, a lot of the time I love salads, but I'm not like making salads to go, like vegetables are getting like mixed into like every meal. Even when I go backpacking, I'll like crisp up kale and like break it into a powder and sprinkle it into my dehydrated food. But yeah, no, typical day of eating. I mean, like, I don't know, today I made myself a fruit smoothie, because I really like those in the summer. In the winter, I like heartier, like breakfast, like eggs and bacon and toast. And for lunch, I'll probably make a burrito with some leftovers. I made some ranch-style beans with sausage and corn and sun-dried tomatoes last night. And then I'm working on a big pot of pinto beans right now that I'm going to turn into some sort of Mexican feast. Maybe make some homemade salsa tonight with like fajitas and some grilled meat. So yeah, it's actually really similar to how I ate in the book. But yeah, if I can get, when I'm not like going deep into the backcountry for a long time, I definitely am like more produce heavy.
Okay, I have to, since you've mentioned burritos several times now, and they're obviously a feature in the book, you have a section on the book, but give me a couple burrito wrapping tips, because this is where I fail miserably and they just end up burrito bowls with tortillas mixed in.
Yeah, so it's kind of like wrapping a present. Like you would like fold, like if you're like staring at the tortilla, like, and you put your filling straight across the middle, I like to fold the left and right sides in first. And then I like take my fingers and like kind of cup the burrito as I'm rolling the side closest to me away from the top with those sides folded in.
Okay.
And that's hard for me to explain because I'm such a visual person, and that's why it was really important for me to do the visual display of it in the book. And at first I thought it was really silly. That was actually one of the publisher's ideas, but they're absolutely right. Like a lot of people, burritos aren't that mainstream, I guess. It's not a sandwich.
Well, I think, because the automatic reaction is to just like roll them first and then you're trying to flip the two sides. And that's, I think, where you start losing it. And if you make it like a wrap, if you make it like a wrap, that's okay. It might survive your lunch, but it's not going to be very portable. Mm-hmm.
And if you really dial in the real wrap and get it nice and secure, you could take them on adventures or in the car. It's just such a good on-the-go food.
Mm-hmm. So actually, when you're running, what do you eat? Are you a burrito on the run person, or do you go with more simple stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm doing really long, if I'm going on short runs, I don't bring anything. But for long runs, like I love bringing like avocado wrapped in a tortilla, or cream cheese and turkey, or sometimes just a bean and cheese burrito. I've done like Nutella and peanut butter wraps, but tortillas just, bread tends to get smashed or things fall out of it. So yeah, for sustainable. The other thing I really love is like cold leftover pizza.
Ooh,
really good. Yeah, Pop-Tarts are good, and Snickers bars. I mean, like, it's also just a matter of, like, a lot of the time, I can't go to, like, a fancy sporting goods store. Like, I love goo waffles when I can get my hands on them. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, it's just, like, what can I get anywhere that I can trust that I've used before?
Yeah. Pop-Tarts are kind of one of my major camping staples, I have to say. And pre-race, it's just so easy.
Yeah, I used to eat Pop-Tarts for races all the time when I was a kid, and, they have their place in a well-rounded diet.
Exactly. The other thing you wrote about as far as greens went was foraging for like dandelion greens and stuff. How did you learn about what you can forage and what you can't? Because I'm always terrified of the concept.
Yeah, I'm not going out and just like foraging every chance I can get. When I learn something, I'm willing to give it a go. And I was out in Silverton with some friends, and one of them pointed out, they're like, oh yeah, look at this whole field of dandelion greens. Like, you know, you can actually eat them. And me and my friend Tyler, we were both living out of our cars, and we were both pretty broke. We were like, dude, like a bag of greens at the market costs like $7. Like, this is like, if we eat this, we're rich. We are rich with nutrients. And like we were foraging, and there were also wild raspberries, and we cooked ourselves like a huge like cast iron of dandelion greens with wild rice, and they were really bitter. I've since learned some better techniques to cook them, but we finally got some good veggies in. And you know, I've foraged for like cactus pears, and you can do like a prickly pear margarita, and you can also like just eat them, which is really delicious. You know, I love learning about that stuff, but I'm not a full-on forager. So I would definitely recommend, if, you know, people do your homework, talk to someone who's an expert. Yeah, don't just go eating plants.
Yeah, I keep looking into foraging classes, because I think it's just like the most fascinating thing, but also, yeah, terror inducing when you think about being, you know, 20 miles out on a trail and being like, this mushroom looks like it might taste good, and then next thing you know.
Yeah, fun story though. So I was kind of nervous about including the recipe in the cookbook, and I was talking to my mom, and she had dandelion greens growing in the backyard, and I'm like, do you mind trying this? And she was like, okay. So she went in the backyard and like picked the weeds and then cooked them for dinner, and she was like, yeah, it was great. And I was like, okay, it's going in.
I like it. Testing. My grandma actually used to make dandelion wine out of dandelions from their backyard all the time.
Oh.
So
wow, okay, I need to look into that.
I know, right? Wouldn't that be great? You're
cool.
in the back country and just making your own wine.
Have
you don't
this
even
weird wine.
Don't even need to bring in a bottle.
I can't even imagine what that would taste like.
Neither can I, to be honest. Thankfully, I was too young when she was still making it, so I missed out on the taste, and I can just think about the story as being really fascinating. But
yeah, oh, that's awesome.
So out of every story that you wrote about in the book, which one was the most fun to relive? Because I feel like that's the best part about writing. You know, when you're writing your experiences, it's like, oh man, I remember that time.
Oh gosh. Huh. That's a toss-up. You know, a lot of the stories have really mixed emotions with them. They're cool stories, but yes, the most fun, the Tundrathon triple, that day in the mountains was definitely one of the best I've had ever. Just pure fun. Yeah, there was, you know, I rolled my ankle, but other than that, there was just nothing but smiling and sunflowers and sunsets and happy dogs and happy people. It was just one of those truly great days. And then another fun one was Burrito Uprising. The girls that I did the photo shoot with in Yosemite were so cool and hilarious, and I don't think we stopped laughing and smiling again that entire day, and in a beautiful setting. So I guess the moral of the story is go to the mountains with your friends and don't stop smiling.
I love it. Also, you travel with your dog all of the time, correct?
Yeah, man, dogs have been a saga in my life. So yeah, when I left the Sierras and moved into my Jeep initially, I brought my 2 dogs with me, and they ended up going back to Mammoth with my ex-husband. They just weren't able to keep up with my active lifestyle, which broke my heart, but it's better for them. And then when I was on the road with my ex-boyfriend, our dog Herschel was with us and traveled with us constantly. And then, as you know from the book, unfortunately, he passed away last year, which was really hard. And it left a void. You know, I was used to traveling with him, and he would run with me every day. And so it was really the longest stretch last year that I'd had without a dog in recent memory. But I have a new dog in my life, and he travels with me and runs with me. Yeah, it's great.
Okay, good, because I've been campaigning for the last 3 years. So every time I have a podcast person on that I know has dogs, I'm always like, tell me about how dogs work with your active lifestyle, because I'm really trying.
And I think again, it comes down to my other dogs really loved camping with me. There were things that worked, but it would have been more difficult than, they had special needs. They couldn't run more than a mile and a half. There were 2 of them. So it just really, if I wanted it all to be about the dogs, if I was just riding and it was all about them and I just liked going for dog walks and I was cool with that, it could work. But that's not me. So, Herschel and now Phil, they can go on big days in the mountains. They love sleep. Phil and I just went on a camping trip and slept in the Jeep together, and he loves it. Like, he gets excited to go in the Jeep. Just reading the dog. Like, there are dogs who can hack it, just like people. It's not for every dog, but it's totally possible. Totally.
Yeah. I have to ask, best part, and I think obviously there's tons of them, but best part and worst part about living out of your vehicle, and hope, like, if you can think of something that's like, more unexpected, I guess.
The worst part is when things go wrong. And I've had literally almost everything fall apart and break down on the Jeep, and like also just the Jeep do crazy things and almost kill me. Or you can argue that I almost killed me in the Jeep. So like car fiascos are the worst part, because it's not just your car, it's like kind of your whole world. And like I had my whole transmission die this spring, and like, what do you do? Like those big what ifs, they happen to everyone, especially and then even more so when you drive a lot and you don't really get to choose where that's going to happen. So that's hands down the worst part.
Yeah. 10 years ago, I had a transmission die in the middle of nowhere in Georgia at like 3 a.m. And that was like, actually probably 15 years ago now. And I remember having to have my dad wire money down to the guy to fix it, because at the time I didn't have credit cards or anything. It was,
oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was brutal. And that was, before smartphones or anything. So yeah, the transmission's a bad one.
Yeah. And I was really out in the middle of nowhere and had some local guys going back to their garages looking for obscure tools just so I could put more transmission fluid and like limp it back to a town where it immediately died. So yeah, that was fun, but I've had other really bad fiascos happen with the Jeep. So yeah, that's the worst. The best part has just been the people and the places that I've been able to encounter by getting outside, just, a static bubble. There's nothing wrong with having a home base, but expanding my world has just been so enriching, and that's made possible by being able to hop in the car and go anywhere whenever I want to. I'm really lucky. I'm so really grateful.
Yeah. And so if you had to pick one place where people should definitely put on their to-visit bucket list, which place would it be?
Gosh, I think before I nail down any one place, I really am a big fan of encouraging people to look at the public lands that are within striking distance of your own backyard. There's so many incredible places. And my parents really pushed me on this when I was a kid, and some of the best adventures of my life, and even like as an adult, has been exploring, what's down the road and what's up that hillside that really seems like nobody ever goes to. I think everyone should do more of that, because that's where you're going to find your little hidden gems and a slice of solitude and beauty close to home. But I really do think everyone should go to Southern Utah, I'm not going to even say one place. There's just Utah in general. The state is so beautiful, and there's so much to choose from depending on what you're interested in doing and what your skill set is and how much time you have. But it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I think that's actually such a good point, the like figuring out what's in your backyard, because I think so many people see the van life and all of these, huge adventures and think about, okay, I need to pack up and like go across the country. But it's like, no, you could just go for 2 days to a place 2 hours from you that you haven't been, and it'll probably be pretty magical.
Exactly. And that's something like, growing up, like I lived in the suburbs, and, I didn't have this like crazy extreme life, but I loved sleeping in the backyard, and my parents let me do that. I only slept inside really when I was like cold or just felt like it, or if it was raining or something. And then they would encourage us to explore all around nearby and take us on like weekend micro adventures and explore different landscapes. And we never went on any exotic trips, but those trips close to home really got my imagination turning, and really at the end of the day are just as exciting and valuable as going somewhere far away.
Yeah. And okay, this is a really awkward topic that I have to ask. It's just my husband always makes fun of me because I'm one of the I'm getting better at it. But for me, going off on a long camping trip and not having access to a shower or even a body of water that I can jump in and clean up and stuff like that just drives me crazy. How do you adjust to that, and what stuff do you have on hand to stay reasonably clean-ish?
I think this is a more embarrassing question for other people than me. I have never been like a shower fanatic. Like, I really don't mind being dirty. This all works really well for me.
I'm sort of like in that middle point, but there's like, I hit a limit where I'm just like, I need to be right, somewhat.
No, I do too. I do too. And I will say that it's a lot easier out in the desert. I don't mind being dry and dirty. That kind of remedies pretty quickly. And there's something about the dirt that kind of keeps you strangely clean. You're not all like sweaty, and it kind of even absorbs, like in my mind, it absorbs odors and whatnot. But like when I was out in Tahiti and I was in the jungles, I felt so disgusting. Like, I definitely wanted to take a shower like immediately. But yeah, just finding bodies of water, and I carry a 7-gallon jug so I could heat up water and splash off. I always carry baby wipes. That's kind of a must just for personal hygiene. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess just finding your limit. I've taken showers at, like, you can go to truck stops. You can go to, like, mobile home parks sometimes have showers. I've definitely broken down if I've been out for a long stretch and I'm far away from anyone I know, just getting a really cheap motel room for the night, get a good night's sleep, clean up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not an easy, everyone's limit's different, but I think the baby wipes are a must.
Yes,
and if you do that every day, I think that can mitigate a lot of it.
Extend your time between showers for sure.
Yeah, I really do think so. I think if you keep up with it, if you don't wait until it gets bad, I think that can definitely help prolong your standards.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're completely right about the desert versus, anywhere kind of humid or anything. Because I'm instantly just like a ball of oil, and I'm just like, can't handle it.
Yeah, humidity's different. And honestly, I'm not a fan of it at all.
Totally fair. Okay. I have two last questions here. The second to last one. The photos in the book, gorgeous. I know, a photographer took a fair number of them. You obviously mentioned him and everything, but you obviously take amazing photos. Everyone should follow you on Instagram for even more awesome photos. Any tips for taking really good photos? I feel like I'm terrible at this, especially compared to what I see in your stuff.
Gosh, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before.
What?
Well, I think the first, honestly, the first thing is, when you go to beautiful places, even if that's down the street or in your neighborhood, that definitely sets the stage to take better pictures. So that's definitely a huge, beautiful places make for great photos. That sounds really obvious, but it's true. But I really like, if you're looking outside and something really catches your eye, so instead of just like taking photos, just take photos, which sometimes you have to do, or you want to do because you're going to the Grand Canyon, you want a picture of the Grand Canyon, but on a more like regular scale, like if you see the light hitting the trees and making a beautiful shadow, or a flower jumps out at you, or the hue of a rock, just getting in the habit of taking a picture of what's catching your eye, and that helps kind of you connect what you're seeing, because really the photo is just an extension of what you're seeing. And so getting in the habit of taking pictures of things that you notice as like unique and beautiful, that really helps you like hone it. And then just taking lots of pictures. But again, like waiting until you see something where you're like, oh wow, that's really beautiful and cool, and then taking a picture. And even if it doesn't come out like what you think is maybe a good picture, you're still working on like capturing those moments that really stand out to you.
Awesome. And then, last question is just what's next on your big projects list? I know you have the other book you're working on, but other than that, anything huge coming down the pipe?
I'm dreaming up another book. It's going to be it's a pretty daunting project, and there's some cool adventures that I hope to take along the way, and lots of research and connecting with some historians and archaeologists. And it's a rather outlandish idea again, but I'm excited to dig into that. And also just, be be present. You know, I've had such focused work. I think it's really good for me to just take some time this summer and quote unquote just be normal and like, oh, today I feel like going to the mountains. Oh, today let's just go on a river trip, or today I'm gonna keep working on this proposal for this next book. You know, not so yeah, that's kind of what next. It was a pretty it was a hefty schedule this last year with the books and the travel schedule. So it's nice to take some relatively chill time, but it's busy, and I'm excited to start a new book. I'm pretty psyched on long-term writing projects.
Yeah. It's funny, the number of times I've said relatively chill in regards to my schedule for the last, I don't know, year that I've been lying about it is pretty ridiculous. I think once you get the idea, it keeps going.
Yeah, I think I should start a support group called Overeaters Anonymous, because now that I've said that, I'm like, well, yeah, I'm also working on co-producing a film, and that might be done this fall, and I have a bunch of articles up in the air that I'm working on, and I'm trying to get in some running most days of the week. Yeah, just life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you start that group, I will be your first member for sure.
Yeah, cool. All right, we're getting traction already. I don't know what we're going to do except for just go, oh no, you're not that busy. We'll
exactly.
Each other.
Exactly.
That seems reasonable.
Perfect. All right, where can everyone find you and the book?
So the book is available on therunningbum.com. It definitely helps if you buy the book directly through me. My publishers are amazing and have helped facilitate it so that I can actually survive off of this book, was much better than Amazon. Keep that in mind when you're supporting any writer.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't make any money off Amazon. And then to keep up with my adventures, I post pretty frequently on Instagram. Running Bum is my handle, and I love hearing from people and interacting, and and I hope you can find me there. Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Consummate Athlete podcast. You can check out my stuff over at theoutdooredit.com or by following me on Instagram and Twitter at Molly J. Herford. And you can check out Peter's coaching, training plans, blogs, all that fun stuff over at smartathlete.ca or by following him on Twitter and Instagram at Peter Glassford. And if you want to support this show and other awesome podcasts, please check out wideanglepodium.com for show info, other podcasts, bonus content, and to become a donating member so you can get all of that rad behind the scenes content and help keep shows like this on the air. And lastly, if you're enjoying this podcast and all the information that we're bringing to you every single week, do us a solid and pop into iTunes to leave us a rating and review. It takes you about 2 seconds. You can do it on your computer, you can do it on your phone, and it really helps us out. Thanks so much, and we will see you next week.